Hey there guys, welcome back to the channel and another video. So today I kind of wanted to touch on this whole Arctic storm thing that basically just ripped through Texas, right? So there's a lot of people on one side that are bashing Texas. There's other people trying to explain why the grid collapsed, why XYZ happened. Other people just talking about it. And I'm not here to cover any of that. I'm not here to talk about why I think the most wealthy country on the planet couldn't have done something about this, why our infrastructure is in such complete disarray and disrepair. That's a whole separate video. What I'm here to talk about is the things that I personally learned from this whole ordeal, right? So we kind of had like a week to prep for this, right? And as many of you know, I'm really into like survival and outdoors, bushcraft, prepping, whatever you want to call it, right? So I had all my stuff. I had my, excuse me, I had my dehydrated foods, like my mountain houses and things like that. I had MREs, I had cases of water, I had all these things. But there were a few things that that this situation really taught me, and that's what I'm taking away from this. Is this was a learning experience for something that was kind of like never really seen before in my area. So, as many of you know, I live in Texas. I live central Texas, the area in Texas that was basically hit hardest. I was personally without power for almost 48 hours, and I was lucky. There was people that were without power for 70 plus hours. And my house has no gas heating. It's all electric whenever it was remodeled. That was not my choice, but that's the way I bought it. My house is a pier and beam, and that contributed to some of the issues that I'm going to explain later on. But one of the main things that I wanted to touch on was how fast this really moved in. So I went to work, I worked the weekend that it came in. I worked Sunday into Monday. Sunday I went to work. It was chilly. Yeah, sure. There might have been just a touch of ice here and there. But whenever I left work at 6 a.m., it was like, this was Monday, 6 a.m. There was just ice and stuff everywhere. It was almost unrecognizable. And about 2:30 in the morning Monday, the entire city where I work lost power. And it lost power hard and fast. I mean, it wasn't like this block and then this block. It was just like somebody flipped a switch somewhere and the entire city was just poof, dead. I mean, the street lights, everything, it was completely pitch black. In fact, people were calling in fires, right? People were calling in fires because they reported seeing the light bouncing from the flames from oil wells inside and outside of town. I mean, these are flames that people have never seen because there's always been that much light pollution. I was called to fires that have been there for 20 years, So it was just really interesting. But it came in so fast. It didn't really matter how much you prepared for it, right? You could have all your stuff piled up, all your stuff together, all your pipes wrapped up. There was people's pipes bursting in their homes, in their living rooms, in their walls. That's how cold. It got down to 36 degrees inside my house, right? And I just got brand new insulation put in. I sealed up the doors and the windows. I mean, I did everything I could, and no matter what I did, this cold was so vicious that it penetrated through the house and froze everything. My friends' toilets were completely frozen solid, the pipes were. You couldn't, even if you had running water, you couldn't even use it because all the drainage pipes and everything were frozen solid. That's one thing I learned is I need to get a non-chemical toilet. Basically, what I'm going to get is this 5-gallon bucket that has a toilet seat lid built into it, and I can use cat litter or plastic bags or whatever. So even if this thing happens again or the water system is completely down, I have a toilet to use. That's one thing I learned. Another thing that I really wanted to touch on is like I had stoves. I had, I have one from Yuko, the flat pack. Love that thing. It's an awesome little stove, awesome little grill. But the main issue was a lot of the bushcraft stuff I have is designed to use charcoal or wood. Well, I can't really use that indoors. And that's never something I considered. I considered my bug out stuff, I was going to be out in a pasture, building a shelter, something like that. I never imagined using my field materials indoors. So I kind of had to jury rig them to use alcohol fuel with some various containers, and then also the canned fuel from Sterno, which worked great up until we ran out of that, because my stuff was designed to be used with wood, which I had plenty of wood, but it was so cold that you almost couldn't even cook outside. If you started a fire and you were trying to cook outside, it took exponentially longer because it was so cold. It just took that long for stuff to boil. And that was even indoors with the alcohol fuel. You couldn't even really get a rolling boil because it was so cold inside. I mean, it was really a learning experience for me. And that was one of the things is, and Warrior Poet Society really touched on this. He made a great video on this if you guys want to check it out. I'll link it down below. But basically, you should consider bugging in before you bug out. I mean, he explained, like, where's most of your stuff at? Where's most of your ammo and your guns and your family? Are you really wanting to leave all that behind? Or what's a more likely scenario is that you're going to be staying there until the situation either resolves or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I still have a bug out kit. I have a backpack that I can grab and go. I have an urban bug out kit for if I just, if I'm traveling or whatever. But I never really set up anything to stay inside. And that really shocked me. I had this sense of preparation about me. I had this sense of control, really, that I had things in place and things I could use and things I could do that would help me get through this. And they did, to an extent. I mean, the food and stuff was a godsend. I'm so glad I stocked up on MREs and everything, because when it really came down to it, we were living off of canned food for a couple of days that we were able to heat on various stoves, because that's what we had, and the stores didn't. The stores had nothing. And even if you could get to the stores, they were closed. And even if they were open, you probably couldn't get to them. I mean, the ice was probably about 2 inches thick on the street, which you're like, oh, Texas, you got 1 inch of ice and that shuts everything down. No, it really did, because there was utility services. I mean, everything was out. It was insane. The city water system, which had backup generators and everything, all that stuff shut down because lines were completely frozen solid and everything. Nothing in Texas was designed, at least where I'm at, for that level of cold. So really, you had to rely on what you had. And there's so many folks out there that didn't have anything, because this is something that's never happened here. I mean, you got to understand, this was new territory for a lot of folks. And actually, one of my coworkers used to live in South Dakota. And even he said he's never seen anything like this. I mean, it was like within a few hours, everything rapidly froze. What was that movie called? The Day After Tomorrow? Where, like, the whole world's, like, freezing over and shit. It was kind of like that. Like literally, you'd put some water out for your chickens or your pets or whatever, and within minutes, it was frozen solid. It was really crazy. In fact, it was so cold in my house that the refrigerator, it was warmer inside the refrigerator than was in the house. I actually left the fridge door open to keep my food good, and the frozen stuff I put on the porch. I mean, it was a very, very interesting situation to be in, and I really learned a lot in a very short amount of time. And one of those was, I tried to stay away from propane and stuff because I wanted to use fuel that I could find out in the wild, i.e. wood and sticks and things like that. That's what most of my little stoves were set up for. But my mom, she had a little Coleman, propane grill, cooktop, whatever you want to call it. And that thing was really the VIP of this whole ordeal. It kept her house at about 50 degrees indoors. And we were able to cook family meals on it. And we ended up actually abandoning my house because it was just impossible. I mean, we had set up like a shelter in one of the rooms, the most insulated room of the house, which happened to be my office. And we were still so cold. I mean, my girlfriend was actually literally in pain from the cold. And we bundled up as much as we could, but there was only so much you could do. The cold was like piercing, So we actually ended up packing up as much stuff as we could and went to my mom's house, which was just a couple blocks away. And with her little propane grill and everything, we were actually able to keep the house warm. She had 4 tanks, the 4 little 1-pound propane cylinders. And that's just something I never considered was having anything propane, because I didn't want to rely on propane. But here I am relying on propane. So that's, granted, propane is like a short-term fix. Once you're out, you're out. But it was a godsend while we did have it, and we never ran out of propane. We managed to get electricity restored to our area, and go for there. Another thing is I'm probably going to get a backup generator. Nothing too crazy, but honestly, having any little bit of electricity was a fantastic little thing. One of the awesome pieces of kit that I actually ended up using a lot was, well, two things really, was my Anchor solar panel. I was able to charge cell phones and battery packs and all kinds of stuff with it. It has 2 USB slots. I just hung it in the window. I didn't even have to take it outside, and that sucker kept stuff charged up, and that was just so nice, having at least a cell phone that worked, because the towers, most of the cell phone towers kept functioning, so at least we were able to stay in touch with each other and check up on family and things like that. Another thing that was really awesome was I have a Stanley FatMax 1000 amp like jumper pack for a car. It's got a built-in air compressor and flashlight, la-di-da-di-da. But it has like 3 or 4 USB slots on there, and I was able to charge a whole host of appliances with that, and as well as keeping my radios up and running, because we were actually using walkie-talkies to communicate, like some GMRS radios, and then I also had my NOAA weather radio, because that's the only way we were really getting updates other than our cell phones, but I had the radios as a backup. So those 2 items right there were just fantastic to have. Another good one that I really wish I could have used was I had a bunch of batteries for my power tools, right? From my rigid, power tool set that were all fully charged. I had these awesome, heavy-duty, high-capacity batteries right here, fully charged, but I had no way to access the electricity. So I was looking, and Rigid actually makes an attachment for those batteries that turns them into a USB power pack. And I'm like, dude, why have I never gotten that? And another thing is I wanted to get a flashlight for it. They got, attachments to turn those batteries into flashlights. That would have been an awesome, really awesome thing to have at that point, whenever our other batteries were starting to go low. And that's one thing I'm glad I did was, I make this kind of weird habit of buying batteries whenever I go shopping. I go to Walmart or something, I usually buy like the lithium long-term storage batteries. They're usually good for a couple of years. And I buy AAAs, AA's, 9 volts. And then I try to keep a pretty good stock of like the Surefire CR123A batteries. And now I have several batteries that use the 18650s, but most of those are actually rechargeable. And I was able to charge those with the solar panel or the backup battery. So that's one thing I did appreciate. Another thing is I actually went ahead and bought a gas heater for my house, and it uses propane, and I'm going to have that. I'm going to install it and put it in, because I literally did everything I could to try and insulate this house whenever I first bought it and when this stuff started happening, and nothing happened. If there's no heat being created, there's nothing to keep in. Literally, it was trying to keep stuff out, and there was no way to keep it out. My bathroom froze solid, and then after it froze solid, we didn't have water anyway. So it was just a mess. I kept, I had all this prepper equipment, but I never thought about having to use it indoors. And that was something that wasn't in my mindset. My mindset was the house will be unlivable. I will have to leave. And yeah, I could go outside and use it, but it was literally so cold outside that I was willing to sit out there and cook on it, but my family was not. And honestly, it took too long to cook out there anyway. And the weather was garbage. It was horrible weather, and there was just no getting around it. But this was a learning experience for everyone. I hope to God it was a learning experience for the state of Texas, but I'm not really holding my breath on that one. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to, vent and tell you some of the things that I learned from this whole situation. And yeah, that's about it. So anyway, I appreciate you listening to me rant. I hope you guys are staying safe and warm out there. I hope you guys are doing good. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.